How to access the Emergency Response Data Platform. Any public safety agency can access life-saving emergency data through the RapidSOS Emergency Response Data Platform. There are two ways of doing so. RapidSOS Portal is a powerful web-based tool that enables you to manage emergencies and access location and supplemental data for every call in your jurisdiction. Signing up for RapidSOS Portal is easy and only takes a few minutes. In addition to emergency management tools and data, RapidSOS Portal includes a training platform as well as administrative tools to manage user permissions, track usage, and analyze trends in your agency. To learn more and sign up for RapidSOS Portal, please visit rapidsosportal.com. RapidSOS also integrates with every major CAD, CPE, mapping, or other public safety softwares. With an integration, you can receive RapidSOS data through your existing workflow, and you won't need any additional screens, tabs, or windows. To learn more about integrations, visit rapidsos.com/public-safety-partners.
Okay, we will go ahead and get started with session or week 11 of the On Scene First 2024 Summer Fall E&P Study Group. This week, we're going to be going over information systems, and that's going to encompass some database stuff as well as GIS stuff. And just want to throw out there, I'm going to look at the day so I don't screw it up. So we will have a session this Friday. I have also rescheduled, added a session to Wednesday the 19th at 3 p.m. Eastern. And then on the 21st, we will wrap up with the last session. And somewhere between now and the posting of the last session, so by the 24th, you should have your hands on a practice exam. I always try to make updates to it based on feedback, etc. So it is my goal by the time that I have the last study session up, because I'm going to kind of need that weekend to finish up. But hopefully by the 24th, you will have a practice exam, and that should give you enough time to see where you need to be as far as the study guides, the practice exam goes, and what you would be needing to do. I think the study session, hold on. I think the dates start on July 7th, if I'm not mistaken. I just want to verify that as well. For some reason, that date is popping in my head. July 6th. Okay. So my goal is June 24th to have the practice exam to you, and you should definitely have ample time to take the practice exam and see where you might need to focus if you are taking the summer exam. So there we go. Just a little bit of housekeeping because we do have a few sessions left. If you are watching this and it is before June 21st, 2024, and you want to be added to the E&P study group, you can still be added, and you will be given access to the Google group as well as a calendar invite for the remaining sessions, which after today will be 3. And if needed, I will send out a recording of one of the smaller sections. This just happens from time to time because of my wonky schedule. So thank you for being patient and understanding that things change and I have to move them sometimes. If you are watching this after June 21st and you would like to get access to the archived materials, so if you are taking the exam in October or maybe even February of 2025, and you would like access to these materials, the PDFs, the recorded sessions, the MP3s, the practice exams, as well as any other documents that I have provided along the way. You can go to that same website, onscenefirst.com/training/study ENP, scan the QR code there, and you can just access the registration there, and you will be given those materials as well. If you would like to be notified when the next live study group will be, as I've mentioned a couple times, I need to take a hiatus from the live study groups, but I will have access to the materials until the time I decide to do another live study group. But if you want to be notified when the next live study group is, or to keep up with my shenanigans, go on over to onscenefirst.com, hit the subscribe button, and follow there, and you will get notified of all the cool stuff. Say thank you to my premier study group sponsor, Rapid SOS. Without their extreme generosity over the last few years, I would not have been able to do this study group. They are a contributor to not only the study group as a whole, but also they contribute to the that sponsorship contributes to being able to provide some of the scholarships that we have awarded as well. So let's jump into the information systems. So the first, and again, I just want to go back for a minute and reiterate the differences in terminology. Some folks will refer to the manual as the body of knowledge. And somebody had sent me a message and had mentioned the body of knowledge. And I thought that's where they were looking for something. And I know that sometimes those terms get kind of interchanged. So I do want to bring you back to the body of knowledge for a second. The body of knowledge is the PDF that is the outline of all of the topics without the definitions. So the manual, the study manual, is the book that you would get from Nina directly. And some folks, I also just wanted to say this for folks that may have joined later or may have missed it when I said it the first time, is if you have one of the most recent, so we are in 6.1 of the manual right now, but if you have the 6.0, you could be okay, but there are some things that are significant sections like the 988, some of the wellness stuff, and a couple other smaller sections that are not in the 6.0. So just keep that in mind as you're moving forward and studying. And then the body of knowledge, that outline, I have a PDF that I highlight when I go over all of the different topics. Some of the topics in there may not make sense. You might just see a word and you might say, well, I don't recall going over that in this section. Just know that it was probably in another section and that we will have covered almost every single thing on that list. If it's not covered, it's because I have no idea what it is that they're looking for there. Like one of the examples under legislation, it says EMD. And I don't really deep dive into the EMD legislation because every state, every place is different as far as what their legislation is. Like in Massachusetts, we have a law that says you have to provide EMD on all medical calls, either your agency or send it out to a third party to do that. But not everybody has that. And I have not been able to find anything in the Nina stuff that they would be referring to. So every once in a while, there's just one little thing or something on there that I don't know what it is they're looking for. So just know we will have everything covered that is on the body of knowledge. And then the body of knowledge and the manual don't always match up. And there's a lot more stuff in the manual, as well as just a reminder, especially since it's becoming test time, if you have not had a chance to go into the PDFs. So say you've just been attending the study sessions and you haven't gone to the Google group and access the PDFs, I recommend doing that. I do have to change one of them because I inadvertently made a mistake on a word and it kind of changed some things. So I will update that and have it for you probably this week or next week. But go back into those PDFs. Anywhere in the manual that they made reference to a link or a standard or something, they're basically saying that yes, the manual is a good study reference, but you should also peruse the links that I have provided for you in the PDF. You should be able to just click on the link and go right to the document. And I usually have a little screenshot of what the title of it is there as well. If you should click on that link or any of the links and they do not work, they do not bring you to the place that you need to go, if you could just shoot me a quick email so I can make sure that gets resolved, I would appreciate it. Because all of these materials are going to be archived on my website in like a little classroom while I am taking my hiatus. So I'll be updating all of that in the near future. So if anyone has any questions, don't hesitate to reach out and I'll do my best to answer. So under information systems, the first thing we're going to talk about is a service order input, SOI. This is a file of completed service order updates that are sent to the database management system by all service providers. So whoever that phone service provider is, whether it's Comcast, Verizon, AT&T, Cox Communications, whoever the service provider is for that, the particular phone numbers, etc. This is an SOI is the completed service order update that gets made. And we'll talk a little bit more about the process in that in just a little bit. I will tell you, you want to know what DBMS stands for because you're going to see it in a few places here. So database management system is a kind of a collection of all of the different databases that make up all of the databases that are necessary for 911 to function. This SOI is also called the 911 extract. It consists of any adds, changes, deletes, it unlocks phone numbers, it migrates phone numbers from one place to another. And they are usually processed in batches. So it is my understanding that when you fill out a discrepancy and you send it to your database management service provider, you'll see that one in just a little bit. The DBM SP or something. You'll see that in a minute. But when you fill out that discrepancy, which we have talked about the discrepancy reporting already, is when you send that out to or whoever the designee is, sends it to the service provider, they're not just going to take that one record and pop in and make that change. It is my understanding that it's usually processed in batches. So that's why it's important to get it in as soon as possible, because I don't know how often they are updating these updates to the databases, but it is definitely necessary. Would hate to have something happen. And then the information is processed against the MSAG, the Master Street Address Guide, which we're going to define in a few minutes, to create records for the ALI database. So service order input, you just think of a service order as you need to make it exist. You need to make a change. You need to order it, add it. And that's what the service order input is. In your body of knowledge, again, the outline, the PDF outline from Nina that is specifically identified as body of knowledge or the BOK, it just says SAG right above MSAG. And we know MSAG is Master Street Address Guide, but I have not fully been successful in any NINA documentation to find which definition they are referring to as SAG, just SAG. Um, I will make an assumption that it is street address guide in general, and I do have a definition for that if it should be that. But I also had somebody identify through Quizlet. So one of the Quizlet questions, and if you are taking the exam anytime soon and you have not started going through the Quizlet app and all of the ENP stuff, people have put so many card sets in there. Highly recommend heading over to Quizlet and studying there. Super helpful. But somebody found when I mentioned that I didn't really know what Nina was looking for as far as SAG goes, they sent me this definition, a listing of all existing structures within a 911 service area. And that was on one of the cards. I don't know where that definition came from, so I can't say for sure if it is. I just wanted to put it out there just in case. And I've sent a few emails in the past trying to seek clarification on that, but I haven't been able to get that successfully. So if it is in fact street address guide, there is a non-NINA definition for the street address guide being a comprehensive directory used by telecommunications companies and emergency services to map street addresses to their corresponding telephone exchange or other service areas. It kind of sounds like what we call the MSAG, the Master Street Address Guide. It helps in identifying the exact location associated with a given address, which is crucial, obviously, for routing calls, particularly in services like 911 and ensuring accurate service provisions. We want to make sure that the phone is provisioned properly, especially when it comes to multi-line telephone systems, to make sure that the phone call gets routed to the most appropriate place. The Master Street Guide is going to add a little bit more. It's going to be very similar to what the definition of the SAG is, but it is a listing of all address information within a 911 service area. So all address information, everything that goes along with the address. Some of the typical things that you would find in the MSAG is low and high addresses. So as the 911 liaison, when I was in my center, I needed to create a service order input to put any new streets into the database process. So if we had a new street that came into town, so when say Benjamin Drive was created as an 55 and older community, I would take the street Benjamin and I would spell it properly, spell it out, and then I would add the low range and the high range. So if it starts at 2 Benjamin Drive and goes up to 150, then that's what the low and the high range is going to be. It's also going to indicate whether or not it's, an even or odd only. So we do have one street in town, County Road, that is like the center line of the street is like literally down the center of the street. So all of the odd numbers are in my town and all of the even numbers are in a neighboring jurisdiction. So you identify that as well. The name of the street, any pre or post directional information, any suffix, the community, the state, and the ESN, the emergency service number. It's usually managed by the 911 authorities E91 coordinator. So there's always an E911 coordinator, and that is the person that is responsible for making sure that when the discrepancies come in, they go to the right place. Any new address that comes in, it goes to the right place. I just have these listed here. They are in another section. We went over those, the emergency service number as well as the emergency service zone in another place. However, they are listed here as well. So I just threw them in here just to have here because it's kind of part of the MSAG and databases, etc. And if you follow the manual, you'll see it there. So I don't want folks to have to kind of go look for it. So I just put it here. A reminder that the ESN number, really important. It is a 3 to 5 digit number representing one or more emergency service zones. It's stored as a 3 to 5 character numeric string in a GIS database. There are two types of ESNs. The administrative one is stored in the MSAG, the Master Street Address Guide, and is returned from an alley query. Okay? It facilitates dispatching the proper service agency. So if you look on your alley screen, sometimes you will see it'll say police and then a jurisdiction, fire and a jurisdiction, EMS and a jurisdiction. And so if you go back into the section that I taught about before, I had an example of ours where our town was split into two ESNs. And under the EMS section, it identified either Wareham or Freetown for EMS. Now, we didn't notify them for EMS, but at the time, we did notify them for paramedic services. So that was a way that I made it easier for the telecommunicators to identify very quickly that if the call is located here, you go to the EMS, it tells you which paramedics to notify. And then there is another version of the ESN that is part of the selective routing process where it directs the call where to go. And I will tell you, it's disappointing sometimes when I teach a class and I ask folks, do you know your ESN number for your agency? I still remember one of mine, 356. I don't remember the second one because I had just done that right before I left. But you should know your ESN number, because if a call gets misrouted to you, you need to make sure that the ESN number is correct, because guess what? Humans enter those numbers. So as you can see on the diagram there, I kind of popped in, just a bunch of ESN numbers. When a human entered 143, they put 134, you can see that would be a different location. So if that call gets routed to you, one of the things you should look at is in that alley screen is to make sure that the ESN number is your ESN number. And if it's not, then it has to be resolved. The emergency service zone is the outline, is the area in which all of those ESN numbers live. It is a geographic area that represents a unique combination of emergency service agencies. Law enforcement, fire, EMS, that is within a specified 911 governing authority jurisdiction. So everybody that you answer for or dispatch for is going to be in that emergency service zone. And ESZ can be represented by the ESN to identify the ESZ. So know what those are. And then here is the addition to the database management system. This DBMSP stands for Database Management System Provider. Okay, so that's whoever it is that is responsible for maintaining, developing, selling, and supporting the actual DBMS, the Database Management System. And so what is that DBMS? It is software that is designed to define, create, maintain, and control access to databases. There are a lot of databases that we deal with in the 911 call processing. It allows users to store, modify, and extract information from a database efficiently. A DBMS providers, they offer solutions that can range from simple single-user systems to complex multi-user systems with advanced features for handling large volumes of data and supporting numerous simultaneous users. I mean, think about it. If you are like in Massachusetts, we are a state-run 911 entity. That means those servers, those database management systems are maintaining all of the databases for the entire state. And that means that all the calls are using the same databases for various things. So there are many different ways to implement them. As far as Alley records go in specific, we talked about Alley and what Alley actually is. But here we talk about, because there is the Alley database, we will specifically talk about Alley records. This is a result of processing data that is extracted from those customer service records, and then it is matched up against the MSAG, the Master Street Address Guide, and the Alley database to make sure. So the MSAG, the Master Street Address Guide, is going to tell you that, yes, New Bedford Road is in this jurisdiction. The Alley database is going to say this call with this phone number belongs to this address, and then it's going to query it against the MSAG to say, does this address, range, location belong to this jurisdiction? And this is all happening behind the scenes. This database contains the content of the record that is displayed in the 911 call handling equipment when the 911 call is received. And remember, and I say this, I just say it all the time because it is a piece of information that if you don't recall me hearing, I will reiterate. The Alley information, the name, the address, the ESN, the service providers that are listed, all of that is not coming in with the original phone call and phone number. The phone number will hit your 911 equipment. That phone number will be parsed out while you're starting to answer the call, and it's going to be sent to the MSAG and the Alley database. And then it's going to say, hey, tell me what you got for this phone number. And then it's going to bring it back. And that's where we get that kind of phase one, phase two. And it's all happening very quickly, right? So a lot of times you don't see it, but if it's a regular landline phone, then it's going to go out and come back very quickly. But it is the Alley that will come back once the Annie, the phone number, is sent out to retrieve that information. And then a record is considered MSAG valid if there are no discrepancies. And we know that we end up having discrepancies here and there, and that's the importance of discrepancy reporting. Selective routing systems, SRS records. These records comprise another database produced as a result of customer service records being processed against the MSAG. I'm going to give you a visual in just a sec. These records are sent to, and again, know your acronyms. If you don't hear anything I say through this whole study group, know your acronyms, because when you take the exam, you may just see those letters. The question's going to say, what is the SRDB? It's not going to say, what is the selective router database? What I will recommend, though, is if you don't know it off the top of your head, mark it to go back, because somewhere else in the exam, you may actually see the abbreviation that goes with that particular acronym. I mean, you might see the words that go with the acronym. So these records are sent to the selective router database, the SRDB. And what happens is, just in simple terms, this index is what converts that Annie, the phone number, to an ESN. and we talked about this before, is that there has to be a change in the phone number into an ESN number to be challenged against the database to make sure the call is going to where it's supposed to be going. The full 10 digits are used for selective routing. And so here's your image here. The Annie, the phone number in the selective routing system records, changes that phone number into the ESN, and the ESN is what is going to direct that call where to go. The E91 relational database schema, I don't know what you call it, but I say scheme. Some folks will call it a schema. There are several databases required to make the 911 call work as it's supposed to. Simply put, the E911 relational database is kind of that scenario, if this, then that. Simply put, it is the building of the relationship that allows the MSAG, Annie, and Allie all to work together to function and work together. So without one of the pieces of this puzzle, you may not get Annie back. You may not get Annie with the phone number. So what does that look like? No record found. When the phone number does go out, you may have the phone number sitting there, but no Allie comes back. Maybe there's an issue between the link with the Allie and the MSAG. And then you see on your screen, it's just a phone number, but there's no address information that's associated with it. That is why it's important to fill out discrepancy reports. I will beat that drum forever because I think sometimes folks will just take the information and what the caller's saying at face value and just move on to the next call. When in reality, if anything's coming through the system and it's not appropriately being displayed, you need to fill out the discrepancy report because there could be a phone number, a problem with the incoming Annie. It could be a problem with the Allie database. It could be a problem with the MSAG. It could have been a glitch in the matrix. Whatever it is, the database scheme is all of these things working together. And if there's one piece that's not working properly, then it could be a problem. This, if I had it in me to say it really loud, I would say it really loud. This is going to be on your exam. I don't know how the question's going to be, but a lot of folks brush over this. They either look at it and they're like, nope, abort. I don't get it. I don't understand. It's actually very simple. I'm going to go through it, but I can't even tell you how many folks. So I'm just going to reiterate this. When you take your exam, I always ask, hey, if there's anything that you saw on the exam that didn't make sense, you think that I should go over more in depth, or you didn't see at all in my study group, please let me know because I'm human and this is not my full-time job and I might miss something. However, if I had $1 for every time I got an email back saying, I never saw NIEM. I don't know what the question looks like. I just know that it's on there in some form or another because I have folks that will come back and say, sorry, getting a little warm in here. I will have folks that will come back and more often than not, this is one of the terms that comes back as they don't recall seeing it. So do me a favor and spend just a little bit of time in this section. And maybe it's at least 1 or 2 questions you'll definitely get right. So the National Information Exchange Model, the NIEM, is a common vocabulary that enables efficient information exchanges across diverse public and private organizations. Simply put, if you think of the number of things that we can call a last name, sex, gender, nationality, origin of birth, uh, ethnicity, etc. And you're going to start merging databases, or you're going to have things querying against another database. Unfortunately, if organization A um, calls it last name, then the organization B calls it surname, and organization C calls it family name, then if they're querying each other, they're not going to speak the same language. So what NIEM does is it kind of forces everyone to be using that same terminology so it's consistent across several platforms. So you have organization A, B, and C, and they're going to be talking to each other. So, hey, let's get together in the NIEM format and let's all do it the same way. And then it's going to be input to this location as one thing. Okay. And there you can see. So it took all of the variances and it came up with one format. So person surname, person sex, and person nationality. And so it says it's more or less field mapping. I don't know what field mapping is by definition, but if you can just confirm that this is what field mapping is, that it's taking like words or like description words and putting them into one format that can be identified over several platforms that are going to be working together. So what Nina has to say about it is their goal to use this data structure for all of the things that they do. So it's the goal to have all of their formats conform to the National Information Exchange Model, the NIEM. The vision is to be the best practice by choice for intergovernmental information exchange. So it is a hope that all the governmental agencies and their equipment that they're using are going to be using this type of system. It is used internationally, so that's good. And it's not only used by government entities. So I'll just go back to my days when I worked at Rapid SOS. Whenever we would partner with, say, Sirius XM radio, medical alert, etc., each one of those folks in Apple Health ID, etc., each one of those entities may call medical history something different. History of medical history, stuff you were born with, etc., whatever it is. But when it all comes into the Rapid SOS portal, it all had to be synced together because you couldn't have like 15 different things coming in 15 different ways. Hopefully that makes sense. The first application of NIEM for Nina as well as APCO is the emergency incident data document. And so everything that's in the EIDD is going to be formatted using the NIEM. Now, I have a little asterisk next to the word incident. Why? Because your manual says information. So it says emergency information data document. That is not correct. And I have sent a message over to on my little sheet that I have heading over to Nina to correct that in the manual. The document, if you remember a couple of weeks ago when we went over standards, the document is what is identified as an informational document. It's not a standard. It's just an informational document. It's just sharing information. And I think maybe somebody just typed in the word information versus incident. So I didn't want that to be confusing to anyone. So the first application is that this is, and look, and I did it. I have to change that because I will make sure that that gets changed before I upload the PDF, because I didn't notice that until I reviewed it over the last couple of days, that it's emergency incident data document. And so this is an APCO and NINA information document. So that goes to show just what I was saying, is that you have entities of similarity coming together for a greater cause, and they're going to be utilizing the same format. So whatever they're going through, they're gonna encourage and want to use that same format to make it less confusing. And the purpose of this particular document, again, this is listed in the book. It is recommended that you head on over there and you check out the information that is in there. But the goal of this particular document, or the working group that had initiated the process of creating this document, was the hope that it would be used to share emergency incident information between and among authorized entities and systems in the same way. It also goes back to, as we move towards cloud-based things, as we move towards over the top, as we move towards next generation 911, where we have much more room for bringing in additional data, again, has to be done in the same way. One of the things that would frustrate folks when we were rolling out the Rapid SOS stuff is they wanted it integrated into their call handling solution. Rightfully so. I agreed 100%. However, there was no way that you were going to get CAD A, CAD B, and CAD C to be on the same page with the same information coming in the same way. So the over-the-top solution with the Rapid SOS portal was the way that it had to be. Otherwise, you didn't get the data. This website is listed for more information on the NIEM. So I look forward to not receiving that we didn't go over this information after those of you that are testing in July, test in July. TN, some folks don't know that TN stands for telephone number. So telephone number records are databases that contain information about the telephone numbers, including the subscriber details, service location, and service status. These records are used by telecommunication providers to manage and maintain their subscriber base, as well as assist in routing of the calls and provision of services. Okay. There are also third-party databases. Again, I always like to throw things in, maybe a little bit extra to make sure that folks know that these things exist. But NINA has what is called the NINA Enhanced PSAP Registry and Census, the EPRC. If you have not requested access to it, I highly recommend that you do. The information is here, and all you have to do is Google NINA EPRC, and it's going to bring you to the page. It's going to tell you what they need for you to register. There's two types of ways to register. First is as the parent of the organization, the one that makes the decisions, who inputs the data, makes sure that the data is correct. And then there is the user access. So if you are a frontline telecommunicator, you can actually request access to it. And what is it that you're getting access to? The Enhanced PSAP Registry online database. As you can see, it is a work between NINA and Geocom. What it does is this little spot right here above the map, if I have an address that I don't know who the 911 center is, I just type that address in. So if I had someone call my center, which we have, I really wish this was available back then. Well, if I have someone that calls me on 911 and says, I need an ambulance for my mom in Warwick, Rhode Island, she was talking to me, said she didn't feel good, and I heard the phone hit the floor. I don't know what's going on. I can't reach her. Right now, I can't just go into my phone system and pick Warwick, Rhode Island and transfer the call there. But what I can do is go over to the EPRC, make sure that I'm logged in at the beginning of my shift, type in Warwick, Rhode Island, and the information for the PSAP that handles Warwick, Rhode Island is going to be there. I will tell you, a lot of folks will say, well, I'll just Google the number. I will tell you that the majority of websites for police departments, etc., do not include regional centers, and nor do they put their state on their website. I just know this from fact from trying to call not places over the years, as well as when I was working for Rapid SOS. So this tool right here, number one, very important for you to have access to. And number two, it is what is considered a third party database. So while Nina is allowing you to access kind of through them and they're helping to maintain it as well, it is geocomms, mapping, etc. So it can be considered a third party database. The Number Portability Administration Center, the NPAC, is a function of the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, in the United States, and it is a data administration. So they are responsible for ported telephone number data administration. And yes, I just put an R on the end of data. I'm from Massachusetts. We add R's to things. Service providers, network data administration, and audit administration. It is part of how we create mass changes such as area code splits, which we've talked about before, and billing and cost appointment. So Number Portability Administration Center, NPAC. The National Forest Guide, we will talk about in the NG 911 stuff. It belongs there. It's listed on the body of the knowledge here, but it definitely goes better with the NG 911 stuff. PSAP Credentialing Authority, the PCA, is a function in I3 that serves as a top level certificate authority for next generation 911. We're going to talk about NINA I3 when we go over the next generation 911 stuff. But it is the root authority designated to issue and revoke security credentials to authorized 911 agencies in an I3 compliant infrastructure. Boxes have to be checked. Tests have to be made. Policies and procedures need to be followed. Equipment has to be in place. So the PSAP Credentialing Authority is the ones who do that. Throughout prevailing standards for next generation 911, credentials used for NG 911 must be traceable to the PCA. So in other words, you can't just stand up a 911 center and be like, you know what? I think I'm going to take all the 911 calls because I just want to. And then you start working with phone companies and providers. There has to be approval from the PSAP Credentialing Authority. Relational databases. It's just that, relational, working together, right? There are two types listed here. One, interfacing, and it's just what it says. Interfacing in the context of a relational database refers to the interaction and communication between different software applications or systems. It involves the exchange of data, which is an interface, okay? Takes data from here, and puts them together. It involves the exchange of data and functionality to ensure seamless integration between components of the next generation 911 system. The data stream, and if you notice, I have the word exchange, So interfacing exchange, it's kind of the exchange of the data where that happens, that relationship between this, and then they get together. And the data stream is a continuous flow of data that is transmitted or received in real time. In relational databases, data streams are used for efficient and timely transfer of information between various components of the 911 system, next gen 911 system. In other words, interfacing is it's a well-connected road network facilitating communication between different parts of the next gen 911 system, the actual city that is connected to the 911 system, and data streams are like the flowing traffic that ensure that information moves efficiently to keep the system running smoothly. So it's databases, the relationship between those databases that are working together. E911 record creation. I'm going to share what it is, and then I'm going to share an image because we like diagrams. E911 record creation. The 911 extract, if you recall, is also called the SOI, Service Order Input. The 911 extracts are sent from the service order system to the database management system. The database management system compares the individual customer record against the MSAG and comes up with two different files: the alley record and the selective routing system records. The records are then sent to their respective databases. And the chart on the next page will explain that. So here's my service provider. Let's say this is Verizon. Verizon will use the SOI, or the 911 extract, and it will send that information to the database management systems. We have the telephone number database and we have the MSAG database. The information, the telephone number and the additional data is sent on over and becomes alley location information. And then the telephone number and the ESN is sent over to the selective router. And the selective router is going to determine where that call goes. And eventually it's all going to come back here. This is just the E911 record creation. We will talk about the process in the next couple of sessions. And then we have a database representative, and that's going to be the person who oversees, maintains, etc. that database. Database development and implementation and maintenance. These are listed as the database development, implementation, and maintenance phases. I don't think you're going to need to know specifically which one they are. I don't think you need to know that phase 1 is the ESZ definition and boundary. You wouldn't have, you wouldn't have to fill in the blanks, etc. But if you were asked a question such as, which is the last phase of database development, implementation, and maintenance phases, you could logically move through the 4 choices that you have. So phase 1, we can't do anything to create a 911 system with a 911 database. And so just imagine building a regional center, because many places we've already have this established. What we are seeing is lots of agencies that are moving to a regional center in addition to an upgraded phone system and next generation 911, etc. So the first thing that you have to do is establish the emergency zone definition and boundaries. So who's living in this house, right? We have to create the initial MSAG creation and have a validation process in place. Phase 3, simulation and discrepancy process. So we have to simulate the calls going through, making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to and going where they're supposed to. Phase 4, MSAG finalization, establish an ongoing process. So just because you've established an MSAG process in this particular development, it doesn't mean that it's not going to be updated regularly and you're going to have an ongoing process. Phase 5, the final extract, load MSAG and telephone numbers into their respective databases. Phase 6, load error correction. So you would take all of the discrepancies, again, batch load them into updating and fixing anything that may not be correct. And then the last phase is going to be the system training, testing, and then public cutover to the new 911 system. So I don't think you're going to need to know all of the components that have to go with each one of these. They are broken out pretty detailed in the manual, but I just don't recall seeing much of it. And I think you'd be just fine kind of knowing what the title of those categories are. As far as location of the database, there's a couple of different places that they are located and maintained. You have centralized alley within the network managed by the E911 service provider, and on-premise alley at the PSAP that is managed by the PSAP or the E911 system service provider. So I don't know how other places work. I know that the state 911 in Massachusetts maintains all of those databases when it comes to the 911 call handling process. So we would never see it on premise. It would be somewhere more centralized. There are different types of locations of the E911 databases. So just to break it down a little bit further, the telco, the service provider, it could be self-maintained at the PSAP. It could be a standalone at the PSAP via the telco. So it's the telco's property, but it's housed at the PSAP, and then individually provided and maintained. And now a GIS. So geographic information systems. Folks think it's a map, when in reality, it's not just a map. It is a system for capturing, storing, displaying, analyzing, and managing data and associated attributes that are spatially referenced. Let's break that down. GIS in general is a bunch of things. It's not just one thing. It's not just a map. And some folks may say our GIS, and they're referring to the map. GIS is not just the map. GIS is a geographic information system, allows for the display of database information on a map. GIS does not contain any maps or graphics. It creates maps and graphics from the information that is contained in the databases. GIS is not a specific mapping program. It is a complex mix of databases, database management, display technology, and analysis tools that can be used to create maps. So GIS is being used to create the maps, but it is not the maps. All the information in a GIS is referenced to a location. A GIS can contain images of aerial photography, photographs of homes, floor plans of buildings, large amounts of text and attribute information, but they are all tied into the database by their location on the Earth surfaces. So as you can see, there's layers there, right? Layer, 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 layer. What is also, I do know to be true on your exam, some of us are geographically challenged. I passed no judgment. I am one of those people. Half the time, I don't even know what state I'm in. It is often the state of confusion. However, latitude and longitude was definitely something that I had a little bit of a challenge with, even just in the 911 center, and as well as on the exam. This was something that I had to create a world for myself to be able to identify the different components, because if you're like me and there's lots of components, you need some Tracyisms to make it work on the exams. So we're gonna break it down. And what I do recommend is, if you have another way to remember this, any piece of it, feel free to throw it in the chat, but don't confuse the two. Like, so I'm going to give you my Tracyisms, and sometimes folks in the chat will post, oh, I remember this, this, and this. Feel free to share it. I just know that this is how Tracy's brain works. So a lot of research says in most places that it is usually expressed latitude before longitude, or lat long. So if you're referring to latitude and longitude, you say it latitude and longitude. Okay? So lat comes first. And if you can't remember, so when you look at the spelling of the words, LA comes before LO. So lat first, long second. This is kind of important. Okay? So latitude and longitude, we're talking about it. Latitude runs east and west, goes this way. And I'm going to give you another cheat on the next page, but latitude runs east and west. It is represented by the letter Y. In addition, it is represented by the plus sign. The plus sign, to me, yes, Matt, rungs on a ladder. And I'm going to show you that on the next page. Latitude, ladder, rungs of a ladder, right? I do use that one, but I just want you to kind of focus on these right now, the latitude right now. So it runs east and west, latitude, ladder, rungs on a ladder, goes east and west. It's represented by the letter Y, and it is identified with the plus. And so for me to remember, is plus the Y or is plus the X? Plus is yes. Plus is positive. Yes, we like positive, right? So we have that Y. Longitude runs north and south. And very simply, longitude has the N, so that's going to remind me that it goes north and south. In addition, when I look at the ladder, right, the rungs of the ladder, those words go together. And then longitude, okay? The part that holds them together goes up and down. So that's the sides of the ladder, which is usually much longer than the rungs of the ladder, okay? It is represented by the letter X. And longitude is the minus. So these were supposed to pop up this way. Is, again, if you want to remember, there's a couple ways that I remembered it. So I always knew latitude came first, because it's LA versus LO. So I would stop and I would go, okay, latitude comes first because it's LA and then LO. So at least I had those two components. Then I'm like, which one is X and which one is Y? The sentence that I have there is the words are in alphabetical order, but the letters are not. This is a Tracyism. It can work for you or not. So when I've put the latitude and the longitude, in their perspective order. They're in alphabetical order. But as I say, the alphabet, X, Y, Z. The words are in alphabetical order, latitude and longitude, but the letters are not. Then on the flip side, knowing that they go north and south, I can make the X with the north and south as well. And then the plus and the minus, they really do matter. So latitude is identified with the plus and longitude is identified by the minus. Now, with that said, what is that going to matter? We'll get into that in a second. So this is your visual for what I just kind of put in there as well, right? Latitude runs horizontal, east to west, rungs of a ladder. Longitude runs from pole to pole, like the long edges of the ladder. Now, let's see. You're sitting on the sideline of a football game, a lateral pass on the field. You'd have to know about sports because I don't know what a lateral pass is. So I'm going to assume it is this way. I don't know. That one would be confusing to me because I don't watch sports. So, but there's just two ways for you to remember it, and I literally break it down in my head every time. So if I have to input latitude and longitude, I will stop and say latitude first, longitude, latitude, longitude. So I have them in order. And then I need to know which one's X, which one's Y. The words are in order, but the letters are not. So this is Y, this is X. And then which one is the plus? So I got to make sure that the plus is in that first one and the minus is in the second one if I'm doing something in in the United States, because that's appropriate. And that's what this is going to show you. So breaking down the plus and minus just a little bit further, is it's going to be based on the equator and the prime meridian, okay? On this side, on the positive latitudes are north of the equator, okay? So positive latitudes are north of the equator. Negative latitudes are south of the equator. So positive, I think of adding more, so it's north. And negative, I think of taking away, so it's less. Okay? On the other side, positive longitudes are east of the prime meridian, and negative longitudes are west. And I'm doing it opposite because, sorry, I'm pointing to the, I should be pointing to the other way. So, hopefully your east and west. I don't always, but I love the Geico commercial where the little bird's like, I know my directions. And he says, where's north? And he points up. That's me. I do that. I would totally do that. But the positive longitudes are east of the prime meridian and negative longitudes are west of the prime meridian. Now, with that said, where our biggest focus is here. Where this arrow is, this is us. So we are going to fall into positive being first. We always want to be positive first, right? So the latitude is the positive, and we're going to be that first, and the latitude is the Y. Why? Because yes, we like to be positive. Yes, 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 right? On the other side, our negative is the X, because it's just minus. It's not good, right? And the negative longitude is west of the prime meridian. So when you look at that, the positive latitude is north of the equator, which is here, and then the negative longitude is west of the prime meridian. So if we are north and west, this is where we are. That makes sense? So the plus is the latitude, the minus is the longitude, okay? And then that is where we are. So why does it matter? Why does it matter whether or not you know whether there's a plus or a minus? Which one goes first? The chicken or the egg? This is why it matters. I couldn't believe I just stumbled upon this. There are times that we have to take a latitude and longitude and put it into some other type of system, whether it's our own mapping, whether it's Google mapping. And if nobody taught you how to do that, you could very easily make a mistake. It could be very frustrating. It could be very confusing. So figure out the ways to remember them, but this is why it matters. This is an example of a femtocell call. Now, I talked about femtocells a few weeks ago, and I believe that I had this this Ally screen in there to show that it actually said femtocell. So this call is not coming through the traditional network. It's coming through a femtocell, like a small cell in somebody's home that is turning that network phone call into kind of a VoIP phone call because the service isn't great. So it's using that femtocell. But what I also noticed is whoever's phone system this isn't very nice to our 911 dispatchers, because generally latitude comes first and longitude comes second. Latitude is plus, longitude is minus. So what do you see in this image? It's backwards. It's backwards. Not sure why this phone system puts it in backwards here in the US, but it should be the opposite. Because if I had the ability and on my 911 screen to copy this and right click and then input it into either my map or a map, it's going to be wrong, as you can see here. So in theory, if I had copied this and pasted it, did this in Google Maps, it's going to tell me that it doesn't exist, because these coordinates as a minus and a plus in these orders are not going to be the place. Okay. So if I was to reverse them and put them in the correct way, plus latitude, that's first, positive, plus latitude, Y for yes, then it's going to come out the right way. So if I put in the plus 30.2 and then the minus, it's going to bring me to Oakbourne Ave, and it's going to bring me to the right location. Do not get caught putting in the latitude and longitude in the incorrect order, because depending on the numbers, depending on the plus and minus, you either end up where you're supposed to be, you end up with it doesn't exist, or you end up in Antarctica. So I would shoot for the right one, right? So you will have questions on latitude and longitude. I do recall them needing to know which ones go in which directions. So if which direction does latitude go in? Ladder, rungs on a ladder, east and west, right? Which way does longitude go? The long part of the ladder goes up and down, north and south. Longitude, LON, north. That's what I got for you. If it works, great. If it doesn't, sorry. Global Navigation Satellite Systems, GNSS, is a network of satellites broadcasting timing and orbital information used for navigation and positioning measurements. GPS, Global Positioning Systems, is one of the global navigation satellite systems that GNSS that provides latitude, longitude, altitude, and course and speed. The constellation of approximately 30 satellites are orbiting, and there are at least 4 that are visible from Earth at all times. More visible satellites returns a more visible location, a more precise location. So Just like with cellular triangulation, our GPS is going to, it can see at least 4 satellites at one time. And so it's going to bring in that precise location. But the more that it can see, the more precise it will be. Assisted GPS is a handset based location determination method that is used in wireless networks today to acquire the location of a 911 caller. This is the older kind of version. It uses a data connection to connect to the assistant server in the network of the satellite information. The assistance data provides a faster first fix than a standalone GPS. The faster first fix isn't always the most accurate though, right? So as you get updated location information, you're getting better location, right? And then it requires a special chip inside the handset. Geocoding is the process of taking an address and returning an actual calculated latitude and longitude coordinate. Reverse geocoding is the process of converting the geographic coordinates into an actual or calculated civic address. I'm going to get on a soapbox here. Why? Because I take location very seriously in our 911 call handling situations. Something that I've seen, something that I've seen a couple of folks have an issue with is when you get a location back and that on a wireless call, and it's based on latitude and longitude, and it has reverse geocoded it, the actual address that gets inputted into your phone system that is appearing on your alley, that backfills into your phone system, that may show up on the Rapid SOS portal, may not actually be the address. Most of the time it is. But when is it most important to know when it isn't? Is if your officers, and I seen this happen, and this is why I share this. I'm hoping to get a copy of it so I can kind of show the example that I'm trying to make. Is the location was, say, 123 New Bedford Road. So the call comes in, it's a wireless call, 123 New Bedford Road. That's the reverse geocoded address. That's the address that plops up on the alley. It's the address that goes into the CAD. It's the address that gets identified on the map. This 123 New Bedford Road. We have a domestic. We hear people yelling and screaming. There's nobody on the phone. I can't necessarily confirm with the caller that it is 123 New Bedford Road. But what I'm seeing on my map is 123 New Bedford Road, and that's kind of all I have to go with at this time. When I send my officers to 123 New Bedford Road, if they get there, they knock on the door, they don't hear anything, and they tell you, I don't hear anything, I don't have anybody here, it is your responsibility to dig a little bit deeper. To Google 123 New Bedford Road separately, to make sure that the mapping system that you're using is not pre-calculating addresses. Whenever there is a call that is unfounded by your officers, it is your responsibility to double check the work that is happening in the 911 center. That means go back and listen to your call, make sure you heard the right address, make sure you inputted the right address. And in these cases, knowing that reverse geocoded addresses are not always correct. It looks correct. It's boom, right there, 123 New Bedford Road, but it might not be correct. Use your dispatcher skills and dig a little bit deeper. We don't like incorrect addresses, right? Metadata. I'm not going to get too far into this. I think all you really need to know with the metadata is It is a summary document providing information about content, quality type, creation, spatial attributes, and existing data sets. It is the metadata of the in it like of the location, of the image, of whatever it is that you're utilizing. I'm not going to go through each and every one of these. They're here. I took them out of the manual. I put them in a more organized form. I don't have any fancy way for you to how to figure these out. It's stuff that you just have to read through. So I did put it in a more organized manner, but description of spatial data. That's pretty self-explanatory. Technical details, the components of metadata and the benefits of metadata. Okay. Um, for more information on cellular wireless location determination, this document is extremely beneficial. Again, you should just be able to click right on that link. It is listed in the manual, so I recommend checking it out. And then here's a couple more resources that they have listed in the manual. The NINA standards format for E911 data exchange and the GIS mapping, NINA GIS data collection and maintenance standards, next gen 911 United States Civic Location Exchange format standard, and NINA information document for the development of site structure address point GIS data for 911. These are boring. They are very detailed. They are long. It is my responsibility, I feel, to just point you in the right direction should you want to go in them. I honestly think the biggest pieces of your exam, as far as the GIS goes, is what is GPS, what is GIS, and knowing your latitude and longitude stuff. Oh, one more. NINA standards for NG911 GIS data model. So peruse those at your leisure. And I thank you for your time. Oops. I thank you for your time. Here's my contact information. If you should need a quick contact, you can just scan that QR code. It will go right into my email address. I would love it if you followed me on social media. It helps with my sponsorships for all the fun things that I do. And if you are on Facebook, in the lower right-hand corner is the On Scene First Safety Net group. It's a mental health and wellness safe space for us first responders. And until next time, heroes, stay safe, stay strong, stay here. We need you. Oh, and if you're still on, head on over to my website, onscenefirst.com/store. I have some new fun stuff in my store on my website. Really cool keychains, the thin gold line keychains, the ones that hang on your backpack or your keys. I don't know. But those just came in and I love them. So if you want to check it out, check it out. I appreciate you all.